Bullies slapped the quiet girl in the hallway. She snapped his elbow before the teacher arrived. That's not just a story. It's the kind of moment that makes an entire school freeze in shock. And if you think you've seen classroom drama before, you haven't seen anything yet. Because what happened in that hallway didn't just flip the balance of power between the weak and the strong. It exposed how far someone can be pushed before they unleash the strength they've been hiding all along. And trust me when I say this, you'll want to stick around until the very last word. Because the twists that follow will make you question everything you thought you knew about school bullies, loyalty, and what courage really looks like. So before we dive deep into this emotional roller coaster filled with betrayal, secrets, and an unforgettable act of justice, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Because the next few minutes will keep your heart pounding, your fists clenched, and your eyes locked on every single word. It was a chilly Monday morning when the echo of slamming lockers filled the hallway of Lincoln High, the kind of place where whispers carried faster than the morning bell, and reputations were built or broken in the span of a lunch period. And right in the middle of it all was Emily, the quiet girl nobody paid much attention to, the one who walked with her head down, hugging her books to her chest like a shield. And yet everyone noticed her silence, almost too much, as if her refusal to speak out made her a target for those desperate to prove their power. Which is why when Brandon, the arrogant leader of a pack of bullies, smirked and decided to make her morning miserable by blocking her path, nobody stepped in, not even when he shoved her books to the floor and slapped her across the face so hard the sound cracked through the air like a whip, leaving the hallway in stunned silence. But what no one expected, not Brandon, not his friends, and not even Emily herself, was the way her hand shot up to grab his wrist before he could pull back, her eyes suddenly blazing with a fury that had been caged for too long. And in one fluid motion born out of instinct and strength she never wanted to reveal, she twisted his arm until the sickening snap of his elbow echoed louder than the first slap, freezing every student in place just as the teacher's hurried footsteps turned the corner, their eyes widening as they stumbled into a scene that was about to change everything inside that school forever. The hallway fell into a stunned silence as Brandon crumpled to the floor, clutching his bent arm and howling in pain, while his friends staggered back, their smirks wiped clean, as if someone had just ripped the masks off their faces. And all the while Emily stood frozen, her chest heaving, her hand trembling as she realized what she had just done. The girl who had never fought back, who had always taken the insults, the shoves, the cruel laughter, had suddenly become the one everyone was staring at. Not in pity this time, but in shock and maybe even fear, because no one had ever seen her eyes like that before. Sharp, alive, unbreakable. And when Mr. Carter, the history teacher, came rushing over, his face pale and his voice shaking as he demanded to know what happened, the crowd of students parted like water around Emily, none daring to accuse her, none daring to defend Brandon. And for the first time, the balance of power in the school seemed to tilt. Fragile yet undeniable, though Emily herself felt no victory, only the pounding of her heart and the weight of what had just happened. Because deep down, she knew this moment was only the beginning of something much bigger, a storm gathering that would test not just her strength but her past, her secrets, and the truth about why she had always stayed so quiet in the first place. The principal's office smelled faintly of old coffee and polished wood as Emily sat in the chair across from Principal Harris, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Brandon's muffled groans echoed from the nurse's room down the hall. And though Harris's voice was stern, demanding answers, there was something in his eyes that betrayed a flicker of unease, because he had seen countless fights in his years, but never one where the victim turned aggressor with such terrifying precision. And as Emily lowered her gaze, refusing to speak, the silence in the room grew heavier until finally the door creaked open and in walked a woman in a dark suit with a badge clipped to her belt, her sharp eyes scanning Emily like she was more than just a student in trouble, like she was someone they had been waiting to notice. And while Harris began stammering explanations, The woman simply crouched in front of Emily, speaking softly yet firmly, telling her she didn't have to hide anymore, that sometimes strength reveals itself when the world least expects it. Words that made Emily's heart pound because no one, not a teacher, not a parent, not anyone, had ever spoken to her like they knew she was carrying something far heavier than books and silence. And though she said nothing back, for the first time Emily felt the fragile threads of her secret life beginning to unravel. Right there under the bright office lights, the final bell rang that afternoon. But the school was anything but ordinary, as whispers rippled through every corner. Students replaying the moment Emily had snapped Brandon's elbow like it was the scene of a movie they couldn't stop talking about. And while Brandon left in a sling and his friends avoided eye contact with anyone, Emily walked down the hallway slowly, her books once again in her arms. But this time no one dared to shove them away. And just as she reached the doors, the woman in the dark suit appeared again, her voice calm, as she told Emily that sometimes the quiet ones were not weak, but simply waiting for the right time to show the world who they really were. And though Emily said nothing, her faint smile as she stepped outside into the cool evening air was louder than words, because everyone who had witnessed that day knew a new chapter had begun, one where bullies would think twice before raising a hand, and where the girl who once hid in silence had become a force no one would ever underestimate again.